optimism. It's one of those unspoken qualities that differentiates a leader from the crowd. Where others see failure, optimists see opportunity. Where others see chaos, optimists see self-organization. And where others see end, optimists see a new beginning. I came face to face with one such leader in this podcast, Jeff Stuit, the founder of Improvement School. He recently published his book, An Agilist in India, which he wrote while being stuck in a hotel room 7,000 miles away from his home in between a nationwide lockdown and a hurricane. And his stories had me gripped. I consider myself an optimist as well, but Jeff showcases extreme optimism. And this talk with him was a profound experience for me. We discussed everything from spirituality to music, and I was stunned to how he related every experience as a learning that one could take away as a human being. This episode is not just an education in being an optimist. It's a showcase of an optimistic leader and the difference it can make in an organization. I am your host Vishal Prasad, and this is EnterpriseJoy, educating organizations to be awesome. Welcome, Jeff, and congratulations on your new book.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to talk with you here today.
You're most welcome. And obviously, the first question would be, what was it like being an Agilist in India?
Well, I'll repeat something I said a couple times in the book, is that I feel I got back from India. If I offered anything and helped people learn something in India, I got it back hundreds or thousands of fold. The things I learned in the contribution it was to my life. I mentioned at the beginning of the book that I really feel that India is the great fertile ground for agility on earth. And there were two reasons for that. When I started practicing there in 2014, I noticed this immediately. And the first thing was the zest for learning. And that I could show people something and they would listen and they would get it practiced and have a lot of fun with it early on. Early on, interesting, I quickly had to learn how to train rooms with 100 people in it. So sometimes I had to be pretty, sometimes dictatorial, but it didn't come off that way. I could say, please do this. And they would do it and then suddenly have fun with it and learn it together. So, and then the zest for learning in the challenges you put yourself in learning for all over the country, from early childhood all into adulthood. There's a real focus for learning and improving your knowledge that really doesn't exist in the United States. I shared this with my mother. My mother was a third grade teacher her whole career, teaching about 7 or 8 years old. And she, what I was sharing to her, she agreed right away. She was like, wow, this is like nothing like what you see in the United States, and just the zest for learning. The other thing I do mention, and the thing that the book focuses on a lot, is the extreme comfort with chaos and ambiguity, and the amazing ability to inspect and adapt in the moment in vast numbers. That you have these collective events in India that sometimes have millions of people in it, and an ability to inspect and adapt and live in that situation is just amazing. And I saw it in Agile teams immediately when I was working there. This is just the ability to be very comfortable with these kind of situations that are ambiguous and deal with it head on and inspect and adapt. And a lot of the book deals with that quality. So those two things together really, that's why I relish every moment I get to come back there, not just in India, but the whole subcontinent to work. I just relish every moment.
And that's actually one of the things that attracted me the most about your journey. So it's the level of optimism. So I consider myself as an optimist as well, but when it comes to agility, my view shifts purely towards discipline, and which in the Indian context, if I believe, has quite a lot of room for improvement. But you, on the other hand, you address it in a very different way. So I see chaos, but you see something that's great, that has the possibility of being extremely agile. So I would like to understand, like, how do you embrace this mindset?
Well, it's useful when you start talking about this to go back to the origins of Scrum in particular, right?
Hmm.
So Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber, when they were creating Scrum, were very inspired by the realm of complex adaptive systems, right?
Hmm.
And seeing that in Jeff Sutherland, if you read his book, you go back to early in his career as a medical researcher.
Right.
What he discovered was that anything, a group of humans, a human cell, or anything operated as a system. And if you gave that system great freedom to self-organize, operate just according to very simple rules, that amazing things would emerge. Amazing, beautiful stuff would emerge.
Hmm.
And that's the core of Scrum, and that's what I found when I talk about extreme comfort with chaos and ambiguity. That's the quality I'm talking about, right? Not having to set up a lot of bureaucratic rules when you're operating. Now, I can almost hear what you're thinking from across the room. It's like, wow, you have all kinds of bureaucracy rules. And one of the things I found, I feel in India is that hierarchy exists, but not so much more than anywhere else in the world.
Hmm.
You have certain flavors of bureaucracy, yes, that are major impediments in India right now, but I have complete confidence in the ability of people to set up and do it. Now, look, when you look at it, I'm sitting here in the United States, you're sitting here there in India. The origins of our country came from the same place. We were a place that was
Hmm.
controlled by the British, right? We had our impediments and you had yours, and you banded together as a country to overcome those impediments, and so did we. And so that's why when I see optimism, I see the ability inside the country to deal with that. Now, you use the word discipline, which was interesting.
Hmm.
I haven't actually had anybody use that word before. And when I think about it, on one hand, yes, there's great discipline in India. I talked about the zest for learning.
Hmm.
Um, that requires a lot of work and a lot of discipline. Um, Following particular spiritual practices require intense discipline. Some some uh, some teachers, some spiritual teachers in India will tell you that what requires intense discipline for many lifetimes, not just not just one. So that kind of discipline, this kind of and there's a whole chapter devoted to that in the book,
Hmm.
about the Agile Sadak. Uh,
Yeah.
that kind of sadhana, that whole concept of sadhana, which is practice towards a goal, requires
Hmm.
great discipline, and I think that really exists in India. The other thing you get into is hierarchy.
Hmm.
And this is a little bit of a long story, but it's pretty valuable. After I've been coaching in India for about a year, I went to Germany for a conference on distributed agile, right?
Hmm.
And this is in the earlier days of distributed agile, where we were just starting to figure this stuff out. I think this conference was in 2016. So and it was an open space conference on distributed agility. And within one group, it was somebody from Europe that
Hmm.
said, "Boy, I love working with teams in India but they're so hierarchical, right?"
Hmm.
And it didn't strike me as true. I've been working with teams, and yes, there's hierarchy in companies the same way there's in every companies all over the world. And there was nothing uniquely hierarchical about India, but that's the story they had.
Hmm.
And personally, the biggest hierarchy I have experienced actually is where I'm sitting now in the Midwest of the United States. Companies have way worse hierarchy than I ever experienced in India. So I started looking into this, and I started finding blog posts, and the theme was continuous. Well, one guy wrote a blog post, said Agile would not work in Germany, and he gave a bunch of reasons why Agile would not work in Germany. Then I looked in someplace, Agile will not work in South Asia. He's like meaning Vietnam, Thailand, and places like that. And some other guy says Agile won't work in South America.
Hmm.
And some other guy says, well, that's weird. I'm in Argentina. And I think Agile works pretty well here. And the guy who wrote the original post said, "Well, I don't know about Argentina, but I can tell you it won't work in Chile, Mexico, Uruguay, and Brazil." So he had a whole list of. But the thing is, I looked at the consistent message that every one of them had is that no matter no matter what country they aimed their gaze at, Agile wasn't going to work there because people were too hierarchical. Right.
Mhm.
So the story that a lot of people have about India is a story that a lot of us tell about ourselves. It's an easy way out. So that's why, when you talk about discipline and
Mhm.
hierarchy, I have found in India, like if you're dealing with horrible government bureaucracy, that people find a way very quickly to route around it. Right. In India, it's a
Yeah,
quality.
they do.
You don't, instead of you just find a way to route around the politicians and get what you need done. And that's another quality that I just find so endearing. It's just you don't let the political bureaucracy stop you, and often don't let
Mhm.
a corporate bureaucracy stop you. You figure out a way and get around it. It's you actually have a word for it in you have a word for it in the word is jugad, right?
Jugaad, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. You just figure something out so you can get and deliver the value you can deliver and keep going on.
Yeah.
And so this is just like when I hear discipline, yes, there's a good part of the discipline. The part of the discipline with the hiring things is things that can be overcome.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I see them overcome all the time. And so that's why, why here in discipline, there's great discipline in India, and a real strong ability to route around things that get in the way of you. Don't mistake me. I think there are big impediments, especially in this realm of bureaucracy in India that have to be dealt with. But the thing is, what I see happening practice there for 5 or 6 years is that people are learning how to do that really
Mhm.
well now.
I do know that you are very spiritual and you're inspired a lot by Swami Vivekananda. So, one of the mottos that you embrace from his work states, do and show, and then
Mhm.
talk about the plans. When I hear that, the first thing that comes to my mind is we are consultants. How will the clients, or how do the clients for you, react to this belief? And how have you ensured that you turn your discussions to a more optimistic direction just
Mhm.
with this about do and show and then talk about your
Yeah.
plans?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I was blown away. I was preparing for a talk, and I was researching. I have Vivekananda's collective works, and I found that,
Mhm.
and it really just blew me away. Because that you can say that's a statement of Agile in one sentence,
Mhm.
right? We don't make big plans around stuff. We create something valuable and show it to people,
Mhm.
and then have a conversation, and then the plans change. If we had big plans, they change out of that. So, but you mentioned, you working as a consultant,
Mhm.
and in the realm of Agile, in the realm of Scrum, remember we're wearing a lot of different hats, and consultant is just one of them,
Mhm.
right? So when I'm having a conversation, if I get invited to talk to a company or an organization about this, I don't start off talking about Agile. I talk about what was it that it caused you to invite me to talk to you today? What are the business? What's working or not working in the business?
Mhm.
Do you need to really increase your revenues, reduce your costs, increase your market share? You need to retain your employees better, right? I didn't just, you invited me to come in here today. I didn't just walk in the room.
Mhm.
What is it that's underneath that? And whenever I'm talking to a company, that's where we start. We don't start with Agile.
Right.
And because you're looking, and if you can get under it, find out if they have a vision for themselves. That group of people has a visions for
Mhm.
themselves that's really caused people to want to behave differently. Something that really lets them step up and leave their old selves behind and
Mhm.
step into this new vision. So that's the thing where you've invited me in here. Now that we had a discussion of what you want, I'm going to invite you onto something.
Mhm.
And here's how it might look. Here's how it's going to look, right? We're not going to make a big upfront plan. We're actually, invite a group of you together and let's get cracking and create something. right? And then so we're really I'm inviting them into a practice, right? I rarely, we keep the big measurable result we want out of the business objectives visible all the time, and we
Mhm.
build our work around that.
For me, especially, values and principles for me are the core for any of the practices. And in
Mhm.
fact, for me, practices will evolve. Values and principles usually stay intact because it's rooted much deeper. And you relate this notion with spirituality. And if you just pardon my ignorance, since I am not very spiritual myself, it did take me some time to understand how you relate spirituality with agility. But
Mm.
let's say if you do encounter a person like me who's an agnostic in your professional context, how have you been able to impart this aspect of embracing the values and principles which are related to the practices that ultimately get used in organizations?
The way I do it is just to be me as fully as I can possibly be, right? I rarely, the thing I can practice not just in India but all over the world.
Mhm.
And one key to it is that you value people who they are inside their own civilization. Everybody has the spark inside them, no matter what, and everybody has something that they can bring in the world, no matter what their background is. And you
Mhm.
deal with people, even people you meet on the street, as people who can provide amazing stuff to the world, and everybody is valuable on that. So I rarely, I mean, obviously, you read this book, that's what you pick up from me. In
Mhm.
India, it's easier to talk about those kind of things than it is in the United States. In India, you see temples everywhere.
Mhm.
You even inside an office, you see people with their favorite deity on their thing. So it's easier to talk about it. And you don't have to talk about it. It's just there in the air. I don't have to talk about those things now because they're just reflected in me
Mhm.
and who and how I treat people. And you mentioned starting out with values and principles. The first chapter of the book, actually, I
Mhm.
really make a point in this book, in the book, not to talk about frameworks. I may mention them,
Right.
but it's not a book where you're going to learn Scrum from. In
Mhm.
the first full chapter, which is a journey through agility, is kind of a narrative, frankly, of the background of my life, and
Mhm.
how what happened. The state of Michigan, where I'm sitting now, used to be the great wealth producing place on earth for
Yeah.
most of the 20th century.
That's the entire
Um,
Henry Ford.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he started it, but
Yeah.
if you wanted to manufacture something, the people who, and it's still to this day, believe it or not, there are more engineers kind of per capita in Michigan than there are almost in anywhere in the world, and they're all focused on making things, just
Mhm.
making cars, but making almost anything. The Midwest was the place to do that, but they got that treating people a certain way, which is kind of treating them as resources in a production system.
Mhm.
And then I said, well, here's when Agile came along. We knew that working in the realm of software, that was a horrible way of working with people. It was, and
Mhm.
you rarely produce anything of value. So that's where the whole realm of agility started off. And then I shift and I walk through the entire Agile manifesto. What I tried to do is a very human way. So
Mhm.
that's, we kind of went off. We've kind of gone off. You asked me, how do I relate to people who could be agnostic or things like that. I don't even bring that up in the realm, right? I'm
Mhm.
not here to proselytize any form of spirituality. I'm here to help you be in your organization, be as amazing and productive and valuable as it could possibly be.
I think when I was reading that chapter, one of the things that I laughed so hard. There was a quote from Henry Ford that you mentioned where every time I ask for a pair of hands, it comes with a brain. And
That
I
was
mean,
his complaint.
that's the crazy thing. So you did mention that there's hierarchy and bureaucracy almost everywhere, and
Yeah,
you just need to have some way of identifying how you can bring in some way of doing things differently. But then
right.
if I come back to the Indian context, and if I just say, the way we grow up or the culture that we have in India, let's say we are taught to respect elders. And to an extent where if we rebel against them, it is considered immoral at times.
But remember, that's how your country got founded, though.
Exactly. And that's where it's like it becomes different in my head. So
Yeah.
we are usually trained to follow orders. But you speak otherwise. You believe that India is a great place for self-organization. And you do provide examples in your book as well of how it is.
One of the things is we're dealing with, especially when you're dealing with people in management and leadership levels, or even I get in some roles in the team level. This is one quality of being human, is that we get comfortable in the way and get attached to the way things are. Because the way things are and the way things been have brought me a lot of benefit to my life. I can make a good salary and marry a good spouse and have a family and a house and all this stuff. And I actually find that reflected stronger in the United States as I do in India right now. But it's there. I remember the first group of Agile teams I worked with, there was someone who, that organization, the leader of that organization basically eliminated the role of project manager. They had a role called a software project manager. And in the way it works, they were right then, being a software project manager meant you were the big boss of a whole bunch of people. And he said, well, we're not going to do that anymore. We're having these self-organized teams, and you still have a job here. And we'll stand by you and give you all the training and coaching support you need, but you're not going to be the big boss anymore. And we have these roles called Scrum Master, Product Owner, and in that company they had something called an engineering manager, which is somebody who worked at a technical level and was your people manager. But there was one where she found out that she wasn't going to be the big boss of the people, and she chose out. Right? She was so resistant to that, and couldn't give up with that. So, you encounter that a lot in the United States. That's reflection of being human. Right? It happens. It happens everywhere. Right? If you want to be comfortable inside a big, rich company like that, there's opportunity to do so. Just don't think you're going to create wild, innovative solutions. If you want to do something, really challenge yourself and create value for the world, you might have to choose to be somewhere else.
Since we did mention about the world, there's one term that's currently trending in the world that's called VUCA. I do understand that you dislike that term. Why so?
Well, I'll admit I kind of roll my eyes when I hear the term. Because if you look at what VUCA stands for, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Well, those things have always been there in nature. You're just describing nature. And in India, that's day-to-day life. So when I hear VUCA, what I hear is people still, reacting to the past, or what they thought the past was, stable and certain and simple and and consistent, right? When it was never that way in nature. It's never been that way. And so now, guess what? Organizations are having to confront the way that a bunch of the non-developed world lives on a day-to-day basis. And then you see that acronym has started, as soon as it's created in an acronym like that, the management consulting world comes up with a bunch of stuff and tries to sell it back to you. I see, I'm just looking at something right now that one of the major universities in the United States will sell you a VUCA leadership certification, right? So it's just turned into a commodity there, when it's something that I think you could, you go out and take a walk someplace in the world and you can experience that in the moment. And that's why I really don't think much of the term. It makes us as consultants and coaches feel like we're smart and important, and introducing and, waving our arms in the air and screaming VUCA, when it's something that's existed in everyday life.
Most of the Indian organizations, we work in a distributed way. That kind of creates, at least I believe, that kind of creates a different way of working from someone who's more co-located in one particular space. May not be India, but somewhere in the world. According to you, what has been your top contrasting factors when it comes to differentiating these two type of worlds? Let's say something in India, something in the West, distributed, co-located. How does that operate?
So India, software, especially for the big service companies working in India, they've adapted to a certain kind of distributed work, and that's really where their growth has come from. But it's a certain kind of distributed work that's a little bit different than what we're talking about as agilists and distributed work. So my last consulting engagement, I was traveling to four different cities in India: Coimbatore, Chennai, Calcutta, and Hyderabad,
Mhm,
where the teams were working and the product owners were all in the United States. So this was a big Indian service company. The client in the United States actually sent me over to India to work with these teams to
mhm,
get them all working agile. And when I'm talking about distributed agile, I'm talking about us be able to co-create together.
mhm,
I say, my niche among certified enterprise coaches from the Scrum Alliance is I'm the guy who will go anywhere on earth on short notice so I can help global teams building global products.
mhm.
And that's the thing. I'm not focused on the country. We've got a team together. So, when I first started practicing Agile in 2007, we would say, no, you can never have a distributed team. It just doesn't
Mhm,
work. Everything has to be co-located. And the research still to this day says co-located teams can have much higher velocity than
mhm.
ones that are distributed, but it's getting better. And this is actually, I think, where COVID might be helping us a little bit in pushing that technology,
Yeah.
that we can really push where we really have to be able to work together.
All right. On a slightly different note, I know that you are a musician
Mhm.
and you like playing in different bands and with different musicians, even when you're traveling.
There's a bit of research in the realm of human systems dynamics, which is the study of how teams work together.
Mhm,
And there was an article written there by a researcher who compared great teams with great groups of improvising musicians,
mhm,
where new teams and new groups of new musicians
mhm.
will always get sidetracked, and if something went wrong, it was a train wreck and everybody would stop. Great musicians and great teams never let any impediments get in their way. If somebody hits a wrong note in an improvising group, well, that's not an impediment, that's just something interesting that
That's an opportunity to do something new.
maybe we can use that. And great agile teams will react the same way.
Victor Wooten also has like these couple of TEDx and TED talks where he talks about the same things about how learning music is like learning a language. And if you're learning a language, let's say when you're a kid, if you make a mistake, your parents don't correct you all the time. Sometimes they just follow your mistakes along with you. And that's how
Exactly.
the learning happens.
The first sentence of the Agile Manifesto, which
Mhm,
actually is, I think people should spend a lot more time considering, is we are uncovering better ways of building software by doing it and helping
mhm,
other people do it. Right? This is not a big thought piece here. We learn by practice and helping other people practice it with us.
mhm. Yeah.
If you go to one of Victor Wooten's camps, which I have quite a bit at Wooten Woods in Tennessee,
Mhm,
we're playing a lot of games together. And I'll tell you, I went to a weekend called Jam Camp, right?
mhm,
And if you've seen an oud, right, this instrument I play,
mhm.
it's kind of funny looking to
Yeah.
Westerners. And the first night at Jam Camp, sitting up there with my oud we're all on stage, and I think I had four bass players, three guitarists, and two drummers on stage, and me with his oud, right?
Mhm,
And I never considered myself a very good improviser. And Victor's kind of sitting out in the audience section, and he says, "I think Jeff should start us off. Play." Boom. And that was it. I had to play, and I'll tell you, within 3 minutes, everybody was playing along with me. just by something I had to make up in the moment.
Mhm.
So that's the point where I really made up that I can improvise with everybody, and so now the thing, I carry that instrument with me around, because you can find a musician anywhere, and you don't have to know their language to do it. So that's the thing. Is if you study or actually even start playing music and get into the thing where you're playing with anybody, that will make you a better Agile team member. You'll learn how to react in the moment without letting all these other impediments get in your way.
Jeff, thank you so much for having this wonderful conversation with me. This was amazing.
Wonderful. Really, really enjoyed this. I can't wait. I think it might be a while, but I can't wait till we can share some time together over in India, or maybe you in the United States, but at least some way that we can get all together. Yeah. Thank you.
You take care. That was Being Optimistic with Jeff Stuit. I will leave a link to his profile and references from today's episode in the show description. If you found this discussion just as educational as I did, then do subscribe to EnterpriseJoy wherever you listen to podcasts. A shout out to our patrons Sebastian Holscher, David Taborek, and Anjana Ajay for supporting this podcast. And if you would like to support this podcast as well, then become a patron on patreon.com/enterprisejoy. Patrons receive some exclusive benefits like access to an early release of the 1-hour uncut ad-free version of this episode with Jeff. So do check out what we have to offer. The details of our upcoming episodes can be found on enterprisejoy.com, and you can send your feedback and comments to vishal@enterprisejoy.com so our podcast can continuously improve. Until next time, thank you for listening, take care, and stay safe.